our 1206 is our buyer broker agreement. How many of you guys use buyer broker agreements? Oh my gosh, like so few hands in this room. I know, yeah, I know, because, well, I mean, I think we're all afraid it's gonna scare the buyer off, isn't it? We ask them to sign something, they don't understand that. Sellers understand that, right? Sellers understand they have to sign a listing agreement. How many of you guys are selling properties without listing agreements? That's what I thought, right? So, yeah, don't raise your hand. Yeah, even if you are. They're not raising their hand even if they are. No, I would never do that, no. Yeah, you're not getting paid without a listing agreement, right? Because that's what the law in New Mexico says, that the seller has to agree to pay you, and they have to sign something that says so. But we're not getting buyer broker agreements from buyers, and I want to encourage you guys to do so. And so our wonderful forums committee and a couple of the members of it worked really diligently on this, and I kind of came in at the last minute and cleaned it up just a little bit, and we have a new buyer broker agreement that hopefully is more user friendly. So you guys will pull it out and not be afraid to have the conversation. So in the buyer broker agreement, in paragraph 2, I'll talk about a few of the other things that are smaller things, and then we'll get to the compensation provisions. Paragraph 2, we added an option for lease. Now, lease was always in this form, but it was buried in the definition of sale, so it really wasn't called out like we used to do in the listing agreement. Remember, we should define sale in the listing agreement to include lease, but we really never talked about leases, and now we have a separate paragraph for that because there should be some real substantive conversation. It shouldn't be just like snuck in there on the definition of sale. We should be having a conversation about leases, so we've done that. Under the broker obligations, some of the broker obligations were deleted. This first one, that the broker will act solely for the buyer in the transaction and renounce all express or implied offers of sub-agency from seller. I think that must have been left over from the agency days. I mean, that's seriously a long time ago, but I think that's where it came from. And so we took that out, and I also we took out the obtained estimated property tax levy. You still have to do it, guys, from a buyer broker perspective. You still need to make sure that the buyer gets that form, the estimated property tax disclosure, but it's not in the 1206 now in the broker obligation section. I want to just clear something up with the estimated property tax since we're talking about it. Do I have any guard people in here? Southwest MLS people? Just a few. Okay, so I just wanted to point out, everybody else, all the assessors in the state are doing this right, except for the assessor down at Bernalillo County. They were not complying with the law and including the current tax information in the estimated tax levy information, which they are required to do. And so it was very confusing to me because I was finding out that brokers were getting current tax forms and then they were getting the estimated property tax form, and I couldn't figure out why they were pulling the two documents. Well, I ended up finding out why they were probably doing that is because Bernco didn't have all of the information in the right place. So it's very important, you guys, that if you Google the Bernalillo property tax calculator, it actually takes you to the treasurer's tax calculator, which is the one that is wrong, and Bernco is now right. So Southwest MLS is getting this cleaned up. They've been provided the correct link, but if you go to the Bernco and not the treasurer's, you will get all the information you need for the estimated property tax levy. So I wanted to clarify that. In paragraph 6, the broker's compensation in the event of purchase, we have really cleaned this up again to make it more user-friendly. So it explains, first of all, the first thing it does is it explains how the multiple listing service works in regards to co-op broker commissions, okay? One of the big things that are coming out of this huge antitrust lawsuit against the National Association of Realtors and a number of franchise owners and MLSs that's going on right now is this, one of the arguments is that buyers have absolutely no idea how commissions get paid, how their broker's getting paid. They don't get any of it, right? And there's no substantive conversation being had with the buyer to explain this stuff, all right? So let's start off by explaining to them how this works, how the co-op broker commission works, right? So that's what this paragraph does. It explains that whole process of how the buyer's broker may, in most cases, be getting compensated through the MLS listing. And I will remind everybody who wasn't here yesterday, because I reminded everybody yesterday, if you are not a member of the MLS in which the property is being offered for sale, you have no right to the compensation offered in that MLS, okay? So you see it on Zillow, your buyer comes to you and says, I want to see this property. and you look at the Zillow ad and you're like, okay, I'm sure it's in my MLS and I'm gonna make an offer. I'll look to make your offer. But it's not in your MLS, and you didn't double check to make sure it's in a different MLS. That's how it ended up on Zillow, right? And you didn't get a compensation, broker-to-broker compensation agreement in place with the listing broker before you brought the offer. So now you are just at the mercy of that listing broker, right? You're going to hope that they are being, are just in a good mood today, and they're willing to just share commission with you because you have no right to compensation in that scenario, none. And this comes up all over the state all the time, guys. Especially, I find it happens a whole lot in our New Mexico MLS, and I don't know how many of you guys remember that, but you have to, you also have to remember that it used to be that when a QB would join an MLS, all the associate brokers in that office had to join that MLS. That's not the way it works anymore, you guys, right? You can do waivers and say, hey, they're members of this other MLS, so they don't want to be part of your MLS. That's okay now. And what that means is that, you might not be a member of the MLS in which that particular property was located. And it doesn't matter if your QB is. And it doesn't matter if somebody else in your office is. You have to be, or you're not getting that offer of compensation. So please don't forget that, guys. Check. When your buyer comes to you and says, I found a property on Zillow, first thing you should do is check your MLS that you're a member of, or MLSs, and make sure that it's in one of those MLSs. And if it's not, the next thing you're going to do before you send that offer over to the other side is get a broker-to-broker compensation agreement with that listing broker. Okay? All right. This is not for you. Okay, so the first one, and we say you check all or apply because multiple of these things may apply, but the first one, the very first one, is MLS listings offering acceptable compensation. For these listings, the buyer understands and agrees that broker or brokerage will receive compensation from the listing brokerage. Unless otherwise agreed to by selection of an additional option below, which we'll talk about in a minute, buyer will not be responsible for paying broker or brokerage any additional compensation. This might be the only thing you check. Maybe you just want the buyer to stay with you. You don't want them wandering off with another broker, right? And so you're telling them, I'm not looking for you to compensate me. I don't need for you to compensate me. I just need you to say you'll promise to keep working with me and not wander off with another broker, right? I get calls about this all the time from the first buyer broker, right? All the time. And sometimes they have buyer-broker agreements, and buyers don't know what they're signing. I'm not sure what's going on there, right? They actually have buyer-broker agreements in some situations. I want to kind of explore this idea that I had brought up to one of my friends, brokers/friends, about, I tell buyers brokers who have buyer-broker agreements that there is no central database for registering your buyer-broker agreement, right? So it's not like you as a listing broker. We ask them in the listing agreement, in the purchase agreement, are you subject to another buyer broker agreement? And they'll go, well. But if there was a central, did you say something? Oh, okay. If there was a central database for registering your buyer broker agreement that other brokers could go and look at, and it might just be a local thing or it could be a statewide thing. And you could put it in there, and brokers could go there and say, oh, wait, you said you didn't, but I have right here and here, and explore that a little bit. Then maybe we wouldn't be having so much trouble with this, right? Maybe it would be a way for you guys to, because what ends up happening is, of course, you guys end up fighting about the commission in those scenarios. Anyway, that's a topic for another day. But what we would like to do here is we would just like the buyer to commit to working with you, right? We're not asking to pay anything. If that's the first thing they see in the buyer-broker agreement, then I'm not asking you to pay me anything. Just promise you'll work with me. You might be able to get more of these buyer-broker agreements signed, right? Because that's not as scary to know that they're not going to have to pay you. All right, so that's the first option available. The second option available has to do with MLS listings offering lesser compensation. So for these listings, buyer understands and agrees that in addition to the compensation the buyer broker receives from the listing brokerage, upon closing the property, buyer shall pay broker the difference between the commission offered in the MLS and one of the following. So much, percentage or a certain dollar amount. I want to go back just to look at this right here because you'll notice in here that we say something about that. In most cases, listing brokers offer an amount of compensation sufficient to fully compensate the buyer's brokerage for its services. However, sometimes the amount offered is less than what the buyer's brokerage is willing to accept for services rendered. And furthermore, sometimes properties are not located. So that first part of that sentence there, that second part of that sentence that talks about sometimes there's not enough offer of compensation offered is where we get to this part here, right? So we already told them that sometimes that's the case. And you go, guess what, guys? We might be seeing more of that now. Because with the clear cooperation, every listing is going in the MLS if there's any public marketing going on, right? Any public marketing. Then 1 business day of public marketing, which is defined, and we talked about that in the MLS in the meeting yesterday. And we will talk about it again in a minute. You got to put it in the MLS, right? So that's what the new rule is. Everybody know about the new rule? Quickly, yeah. So between now and May 1st, all the MLSs, realtor-owned MLSs, are going to have to get up to speed on this. And what it says is that within 1 day of public marketing, which they define is signs, Facebook, social media, any kind of marketing, pretty much, of the property, you have to put it in the MLS and in the MLS. Now, there's never a requirement of the amount of compensation. Some compensation has to be offered in the MLS, but it could be $1, or it could be any amount that you want to put in there. So they're not dictating the amount. But what we're going to see is a lot more listings in the MLS, and some of them might be for something less than the full commission that you guys are used to seeing, or something that you feel would be acceptable to work for. And that's where this provision comes in. So the buyer is saying, I understand for those type listings, I still want to see the properties, and I'm willing to pay you the difference between what they're offering in the MLS and whatever you guys fill in here, right? And we say down at the bottom here that it's important. Buyer understands and agrees that if buyer has not chosen this option B, broker has no duty to inform buyer or show buyer any properties with respect to compensation is offered in the MLS less than a certain amount, okay? So we're explaining all of this to the buyer. And this was in there before as well, that provision. The last provision, and again, you can check any of these and all of these that apply, right? So you can, any of these might apply. The non-MLS listings. And now, why would we have a non-MLS listing? Well, before it might be because the party is just keeping it out of the MLS. We're again going to see a lot less of that with clear cooperation in the picture, right? Because the only way you can keep it out of the MLS now is if you're only marketing it within your brokerage. Only within your brokerage walls. You can't post it on Facebook. You can't put a sign in the front yard. You can't do anything like that. You can only market it within your brokerage walls. So most things are going to go, except for those few office exclusives that people really don't want it out there in the world for privacy reasons. Celebrities or divorce situations or what have you. All those other listings are going to go in the MLS. But this is going to apply probably most to FSBOs, right? So if you have FSBOs, they're not going to show up in the MLS at all. So there's going to be no offer of compensation. So we're not going to be dealing with 1 or 2 because there's going to be no offer of compensation anywhere. And so this is saying that in the event that there is, you're going to first try to go to the listing, either the listing broker, if that's the case, but again, that's going to be very rare these days, or go to the seller themselves to try to get compensated. You're going to make that effort. But in the event you can't, your buyer is going to have to pay you, okay, if you check this box. Right? And again, we're telling them that in the event that they don't want to pay you, then you're not obligated to be looking and showing those type properties where there's no compensation offered. All right? All right. So that's our whole new approach to compensation. Again, the idea being that this would be checked probably a lot of the time just to get them to work with you and not have them obligated to pay anything, right? And at least that keeps them from wandering off with another broker, in theory. Okay, paragraph 9, we've added some language on value estimates found on various websites. Because sometimes they're not accurate, right? So we're telling the buyers, hey, you might see a property advertised on one of these other websites because all the listings are syndicated, or most listings are syndicated, these public-facing websites, and you might find one on there that has an estimate or no, I didn't say that. An estimate, and it might not be all that accurate. And it's telling the buyer that. So don't get hung up on that, right, and think that that's the value of the property because they are often or not completely correct. Now, I will just mention to you guys, as you know, we have a provision in the listing agreement that explains to the seller that in the event that they have opted to get their, put their property on the internet, it's going out to all of these public-facing websites. We also have an IDX feed, right, and the IDX feed is different than the syndication, right, because that's between brokers, right. That allows you to advertise hers and her to advertise yours on your website. That's IDX, right? If the seller has opted out of blogging or estimates the estimated value of their property, you have control of that on the IDX feed. You can notify the MLS, I don't want that, I don't want my other participant in my MLS to be able to put AVMs or blogging features on my client's property. You can do that. Yeah, that's in our listing agreement, and you can opt for that. It also says that you have little to no control over public-facing websites. So once it goes out there into the world, you ever tried to get that off there somewhere?
Yes.
It's like next to impossible, right? And we tell them that in the listing agreement, right? You only have control over IDX, you can't control these other places, so you just have to know when you opt, and you say, no, I don't want blogging, no, I don't want AVMs. You can only control what's happening on the IDX feeds in your own websites, right? Okay, so we tell them that. So we're telling the buyers, don't get too hung up on that amount. They can be very inaccurate. So